If you are from South Korea, or are familiar with the country, then you've heard about their impossible-to-achieve beauty standards. A V-shaped face, double eyelids and big eyes, perfectly white and aligned teeth, a high nose bridge and a slim nose, scarily pale skin, skinny legs. Some people spend thousands trying to achieve this look. Others die for it on extensive surgeries. Looking good isn't just a matter of self-esteem, but social etiquette, as you're seen as lazy and even dirty because you can't take care of yourself. I was lucky, you see. I already had most of the package naturally. I've heard more than once that other people would kill for my looks. But beauty always comes at a price. If you're too pretty, kids will bully you throughout your childhood. They cut and pull your hair, bruise your skin, cut off and stain your clothes, then later do plastic surgery to achieve a face similar to yours, and then get made fun of by other people who've done the same because they've obviously undergone plastic surgery. Go figure, right? Be born beautiful and get bullied, or be born ugly and do things to achieve beauty and then get made fun of regardless. It's a system you just simply can't beat. You're probably wondering, what if you decide to remain ugly or simply can't afford plastic surgery? Well, worse for you. My friend Hairen was part of the group of people that was too poor to afford it. She's the only friend I ever made. I was bullied and changing schools did nothing when I'm an absolute ray of sunshine. Because of bullying. Misery loves company, I guess. Though in her case, lack of beauty is the matter. She had a wide, square face, crooked teeth, uneven eyes, a darker skin tone, everything people in this country seem to think is unattractive. She was an easy target for students and teachers to bully, no matter how many times I defended her. It didn't help that, compared to me, she looked even worse in their eyes. It saddens me to see how wrong they are. Hairen is beautiful both inside and out. She's the most kindest, caring, most radiant person you'll ever meet. And I'll never forgive myself for letting the bitterness of others' hate turn her into a monster, just because she doesn't look like a carbon copy of everyone else. Yes, I think at this point it's safe to say she is a monster. Whatever she became isn't human anymore. But I'll get to that in a second. Since we're both high school seniors, we're close to the age most people get plastic surgery as graduation gifts, and the insecurity has been eating her away more and more ever since the school year started. She had been saving up some money to at least get her eyelids done, but turns out the money she had wasn't nearly enough, and her parents couldn't really afford to blow their money into it. She then turned into illegality, surgeons that would operate on minors without parental consent, or that would accept workforce as a payment, or even largely discounted unknown clinics. I tried to discourage her, I really did. I mean, she was already beautiful, and would risking her health and life be worth it? However, what was trivial to me meant the world to her, and I did everything I could to help her, from skincare products I bought to a dentist appointment for braces. But by the time the beginning of summer was nearing its end, she was hiding behind thick bangs and foundation that was way too light for her face, and the bullying never stopped. Until one day, after our last half of summer vacation, Hairen came back. Beautiful. She even had the thin legs that I lacked, and I couldn't even recognize her at first, as she was a completely different person. People were in awe, not only because of her new appearance, but also for the miraculous recovery. She had a blepharoplasty, a few different subtypes of rhinoplasty, liposuction, breast implants, dental surgery, and a drastic jaw shaving, not to mention lip, cheek, and egg yolk cell failures and skin whitening treatments. That's a lot for a person to go through, especially all at once. And the worst part was being left out even by her. One day she decided to make all the arrangements to have plastic surgery and never once told me. Never once called me to say she was fine and recovering. Never once thought of telling me about her new look. All of a sudden, I was just a part of her past. Nonetheless, no questions were asked. Beauty was all that mattered, at least to them. And she finally had the confidence to be herself unapologetically, going as far to ask the boy she liked out on a date. Though life has seasoned me, and I knew that miracles just don't happen. People wouldn't change their minds about her so easily, and this ride was about to crash. I was proven right when the boy she confessed to made fun of her for being plastic. That was the end of her newfound self-esteem. She called me crying, and I almost punched him square in the face. Told you, I was a ray of sunshine. I tried to comfort her in every way I could, until she asked me the question that prompted me to write this story. There's no way to win, is there? No matter how hard or how effortlessly it comes to you, it's never good enough. We roamed the streets mindlessly that afternoon, talking about trivial things. We both knew there was an underlying issue we had to face. However, we tried to brush it off. Politeness, you know? It hurts more if you talk about it. We parted ways when it was past dusk, and the streets were already dark. I came back home and barely slept. Hyren decided she needed to do better with her appearance. The very next day, she came to school different than before. The results could be described as uncanny. You've heard of wax dolls, right? That's how she looked. The good characteristics were so emphasized that she looked unreal in a bad way. Her eyes were too large, cheeks too full, breasts even bigger than before. You get the idea. She was starting to become what's known as a Gangnam Uni here in Korea. Weeks passed, and I began to worry about her more and more. But every time I tried to talk to Hyren, she ignored or avoided me. I could see through her facade of confidence. It was all bullshit. And last week, I had enough of pretending, and asked a teacher to talk to her. At this point, her obsession was way past unhealthy, and she was risking her life and spending money God knows where it came from. That teacher had disappeared, and is now officially declared as missing. At this point, I don't know what to believe anymore. Can my friend have anything to do with it? Said teacher was last seen walking around her neighborhood, and anytime I tried to call her house, no one ever picked up. But I wanted to talk to her and her parents and do something. Friday came, and I went to her house after school. Seeing the place where we spent so many afternoons as kids playing broke my heart. I hadn't noticed before how much we had drifted apart. I rang the doorbell, determined to make things work again. But no one answered. I knew Hyren wasn't home, but her parents were supposed to be. The lights were on after all. So I did something I'm not very proud of. I opened the door with the spare key they had under a plant vase and entered the house. As soon as I opened the door, I could feel every single bone in my body. that something was wrong. The putrid smell of decay entered my nostrils and filled my lungs until I almost puked. Walking through the house made me realize very quickly that whatever was rotting wasn't just the spoiled food in the sink or in the trash that had not been taken out in weeks, but something much more sinister. I was genuinely afraid of what could have happened, knowing her parents would never let the house get this bad under any circumstances. I looked through the living room, kitchen, bathrooms, and her parents' bedroom, and found everything just as messy, dirty, and stinky. But I couldn't yet figure out where the smell was coming from. The only place left to look was Hiram's bedroom. Just like the rest of the house, it was filled with trash, dirty dishes, clothes everywhere. It was dark and the air was damp, but the smell of putrefaction was even stronger here. But before I looked through everything, I heard the front door open and hid inside her wardrobe, letting only a small part open to see what was going on. I soon regretted my choice, as the rotting smell became absolutely unbearable. I could barely breathe inside the putrid, small and dark space. Feeling something else brush against my skin and cause me shivers. However, there was no time to hide elsewhere as Hiram entered her bedroom in determined footsteps and took something out of the space under her bed. What I saw looked like a manicure kit or something like that, but it was something else entirely. She had knives, files, sewing needles and thread, scissors, and other things that didn't make a lot of sense at the time. Those things started to make sense as she proceeded to take the bottle full of a yellow, thick, and bloody liquid and used a syringe to inject it into her cheeks, eggyosal, and later her breasts. She looked so stuffed, as if she were ready to burst. The procedures didn't stop, and now it was time for her legs. They were so skinny, it was skin and bones at that point. But as I thought there was nothing else left to take, Hiram used that same syringe to extract the yellow liquid from her legs and put it inside the bottle. It was then that I realized it was pus, and her wounds were so infected she was rotting from the inside out. Kept alive, God knows how. Later on, I watched her cut right at her jawline with a small knife, tearing apart her skin, fat and muscles, until she reached her bone. Blood dripped from the wounds, soaking the paper white skin of her bony shoulder. When the hole was big enough, she put the knife aside and got the nail file and started filing her bone. Little flakes of bone fell over her shoulders on the ground, almost like snow. The noise it made was so horrifying that I shiver even just by remembering it now. I found courage I didn't know I had back then to prevent me from vomiting upon the sight. Every time blood soaked the bone too much to keep on working, she just got a piece of cloth to soak it off and kept on filing. By the end of it, her jaw was so thin, it was impossible that she still had enough strength to bite and chew food. Though she seemed satisfied, as she got a needle and thread and started to sew the wound back closed. First the muscles, and then the skin. And each time the needle went through her skin, cruelly stitching it returned to normal, as if there had been no incision, like magic. Suddenly there were no stitches, no blood, no scars, nothing at all, just smooth, ghostly white skin. While trying not to puke, I accidentally moved and something fell over me. a body. A rotting corpse whose skin was melting away by the hot and humid weather. I recognized it as her mother by the hair that just kept falling over me. It wasn't just the two of us in there, as I soon knew, since her father was also there, on my other side. And I kept seeing extra pieces of arms and legs that I can only assume are other people Hyran also murdered. The things that kept brushing against my skin weren't clothes. They were corpses, and I had to make them company while sitting through that horror show until she finally got tired of shaping herself to be as uncanny as a living thing as can possibly be. After a few hours, Hyran left for good, and I took enough courage to leave her wardrobe, running away from her house like a madwoman. I had seen something that cursed my eyes forever. Even now, when I lie down to sleep, I can still see and hear her filing her jawbone. It's a noise you can't forget, a sight you can't forget. No matter how many showers I take, I can never clean off the smell of a rotting corpse that reeks from my skin, even if I can just smell it. I don't know what to do, or how to do, or anything. I only know one thing. Hyran must be stopped. Whatever monster she became, I can't let her exist like this. It's something I owe to the once good, kind-hearted girl I was friends with. I'm afraid that whatever humanity she had left is gone. And not even our years of friendship will be able to protect me from her. Hey everyone, I'm here to inform you more about what's been going on as of now. I was in a pretty bad mental state when I wrote part 1. Not that I'm much better now, but at least I've got more mental clarity. And I failed to inform that yes, I had called the police. Once I got home that day, it was the first thing I did, in hopes that they would catch Hyran on time, but that didn't happen. Police found nothing but trash in her home, no corpses, and not even a sign of the girl herself. And since she's also been missing ever since, they have no evidence or means to perform an arrest. I, of course, omitted the fact that she had been operating on herself while I was hiding inside of her wardrobe, as I don't want them to think I'm crazy and discard the things I've said. Her parents are now declared missing. About 2 weeks have passed since they last went to work, but as Hyran had called the business that they work for to say that they had a family emergency and would be out of the country for the month, they pressed no charges. Other people around the area have been going missing as of recently, at an alarming rate, including 2 children. But all they can do for now is search for any leads of the missing people, and Hyran as well. And, quite frankly, I doubt the police can help. Whatever she has become isn't human anymore, and arresting her won't stop her. Because of this, I decided to take matters into my own hands and look for her. I'm neck deep into this mess, and now that she probably knows what I've seen, my life is in danger. My first idea was to see where she had done the plastic surgery, firstly, during summer, if she really did go to a clinic instead of doing it herself. I knew her email address and password, so it was pretty easy to use a VPN. I mean, I'm not dumb enough to leave traces. And log into her account. After that, I filtered her emails, searching for any clinics and hospitals she contacted. One of the exchanges stood out to me. I'm translating here exactly what was written, redacting their emails for privacy. From @down.net to @down.net. Dear Miss Hyran, we are here to confirm your appointment at 8 a.m. on Thursday, July 12th. Your payment has been approved as of today, and we are ready for your operation. We wish you the best of luck. Clinic, telephone number. The text mentioned nothing about what kind of operation she was going to have, but a quick search showed me that it was one of those cheap, unknown plastic surgery clinics, so it wasn't hard to figure out. But what did they mean by payment? Hyren had no money. Her parents worked long shifts at work to provide for her, and she had almost no savings. Yet somehow she was paying thousands of dollars on expensive procedures. Something was clearly wrong, and either this was a scam, or she robbed a bank and didn't tell anybody about it. I wrote down the address and stopped by today during the afternoon. The supposed clinic was nothing more than a run-down house. The paint was decrepit, the windows were small and dirty, the grass was slightly overgrown, and the curtains that blocked the view of the inside were thick and pulled all the way down. I had a bad feeling about it. As some of you suggested, I brought a pocket knife with me, but I wasn't so sure it was going to be very helpful against whatever could be inside. But I had to be brave, and I entered anyway, wishing for the best. Besides the receptionist, who was a tall boy with deep dark circles under his eyes, there were only 2 other people inside, both women. One of them looked to be in her mid-20s and had bandages all over her swollen face, while the other one looked to be in her late 50s and seemed to be there just to make company for the younger girl. They both looked at me, uninterested, and I went straight to the receptionist. He probably wasn't much older than me, and I wondered for a moment what a boy my age could be doing there. "Clinic. How can I help you?" he asked. "Actually, I'm here because a friend of mine had plastic surgery here before, and she told me if I gave her name I would receive a discount." I was lying shamelessly without even knowing if it would work, but if you know anything about Desperation, you'd understand me. You at least have to try. But that apparently worked, somehow. "Yeah, what's her name?" he said. I told him Hyren's full name and showed him a before and after picture of her. And that's when I knew I had gotten it. The boy looked terrified for a second, and looked like he could barely breathe, let alone speak. After about 5 seconds of absolute silence, he looked over my shoulder to the 2 women sitting behind me, and, upon seeing their supposed indifference, he spoke in a softer, quieter tone. "When did she recommend you here?" "Last week. Why?" I pretended to be innocent so much that it hurt. I could see the panic on his face become sheer horror. At that moment, one of the doors opened and another man called the woman behind us. The receptionist then said to the man, I assumed he was a doctor, in a deeply desperate tone, "I'm sorry, Dr. Seo. I have an emergency. Can I leave for today, please? It's really important." Said Dr. Seo complained, but eventually let him go, and once we were both outside the clinic, the boy pushed me into an empty alleyway and just told me, "You're kidding, right? You haven't spoken to that girl last week, have you? That's impossible." "No, I'm being serious. I really did speak to her last week, and now she's missing. Is there anything you want to tell me?" I was relieved to finally tell the truth, even if just partially. I mean, I had seen Hyren, even though I wish I hadn't. And she really was missing now. Whatever he knew was important enough that I needed to be talked to about it in private. "That girl died on the operating table. Listen, I'm not supposed to tell you this. Dr. Seo would kill me if he knew I told this to anyone, but she died of blood loss this summer while operating. Too many surgeries at once, and this is what happens. It's not the first time. The thing is, she never mentioned she was a minor, and he never asked. Her parents probably didn't even know she signed up for this, because the contact numbers she gave were all fake. If the police knew about it, Dr. Seo would lose his license, so he buried her. Whoever this person you spoke to is, this isn't her, because she's dead." I was taken by surprise for a moment, but at the same time, part of me already knew that Hyren, the Hyren that I knew and loved, was dead. Before, I thought it was just metaphorically, though now it seems more literal than I ever dreamed. However, I needed proof that she died, and this That this wasn't just an elaborate scam to fool me. There's no way this isn't her. I saw it. It's her face, her body, her voice. It's her. No impersonator can be that good. You either prove it to me, or I call bullshit. I can prove it. But if you call the police, you're dead and I'm dead. Dr. Seo said he would employ me as an assistant in the surgery if I ever told anyone, even though I did nothing, so I'm fucked as well. You can't tell anyone about this. I already paid my price when I decided to be compliant, and now I can't sleep because guilt is eating me alive from the inside out. Living with guilt for the rest of my life is a good enough punishment for me. He basically begged. If you want to see, I can show you where she's buried, but you have to promise me to keep quiet. Following a stranger, especially a man, into somewhere I didn't know when it was already dark probably wasn't a good idea. But if I wanted to see it with my own eyes instead of just trusting his words, I knew I had to go without questioning even further. I didn't know when or if I would have that opportunity again. I had to dare to know. I followed him into another street, not far from where the clinic is, and when we arrived at an empty lot with overgrown grass and trash piled up, that was the place where they buried her. We walked inside the lot, taking care with each step as to not step over garbage piles or worse. In a corner next to a rusty fence, there was part of the ground that had several piles of trash bags over it, but no grass underneath. "It's here," he said, "but I won't dig anything." After 5 minutes of removing bags and digging with my own hands, he finally decided to help me as well, or else we wouldn't be finished in a single night. Soon enough, we reached something hard, like wood, and found what we had been looking for. A big wooden box was the improvised coffin that had Hyren's body and her personal belongings. Except, inside the box, there was no body to be found. We found her purse, her cell phone, her wallet, a little rosary she had ever since she was little, and her clothes, the shirt I gave her on her last birthday, her favorite sandals, the skirt she said was her lucky one, the things that made Hyren the person she used to be, and that are now a part of the past, long forgotten. Something inside me hurt when I saw all of the little things that were so precious to her, reduced to trash, thrown away with so little care. But I didn't have time to be sad. Fear took over me once it really hit me that Hyren wasn't buried here. Somehow she made it outside of the grave, and I wasn't the only one panicking over this. You were right. She's alive. Who knows how, but she's fucking alive. But where the hell is she now? The answer to that question was something I dreaded. For a person that, just a mere minute ago, talked about daring to know, I'm a damn big coward. But I have never been more afraid. Afraid of what could happen to me and the people around me. We walked together until I was close to my home, parting ways at a gas station, with a promise that I wouldn't tell the police that Hyren is not dead, but should be. According to his testimony, it's completely impossible that she was still alive, simply because Dr. Seo cut her into pieces to fit inside that box. As to not raise suspicion. If she didn't die in the surgery, there was no way she left the clinic alive. You cannot survive that. Whatever came to school past summer wasn't her, and the rejection only made it descend into madness. My parents were working late, as they always did on weekdays, though I'm used to dining alone. At least for now, it would be good to have time to think alone. But I couldn't help but feel scared and defenseless like this. I tried to take my mind off of it by turning on the TV and putting on some music, though nothing really helped. The feeling of uneasiness just faded into the background noise. As I was preparing dinner, I received a text from a number that I knew so very well. The first message in a long time. Only this time, there was no friendly banter, but this time it was a threat. It was a picture of me and the receptionist walking together on the street, with the caption, "Having fun with your little boyfriend?" Immediately after receiving the message, I did what I thought was reasonable and called the police, to warn them that I was receiving messages from a supposedly missing person. At least this way they could trace the location of the phone where the text was sent, even though I already knew Hydran was following me and probably close by. My parents ended up arriving soon after the police left, and not wanting them to get involved in this mess, I told them someone tried to break into the house while they were out. This way, it was easier to convince them to throw away the food. After all, I can't be sure she had messed with anything inside the house. I can't tell them my friend died and became a bloody monster that wants me dead. Not if I want them to take me seriously anyway. I ended up sending a text to the receptionist, Dae-sung, to warn him about it. His life was probably in danger as well, and I couldn't just leave him in the dark. Each minute I had to wait before he replied was torture, and in my mind I could only imagine the gruesome ways Hydran could have killed him in the meantime. Anxiety was eating me alive, and my empty stomach was starting to feel worse than ever. When he finally replied, he was pretty shocked to hear that the person who sent that picture was the girl he had helped bury months ago, and that she was also following us. More than shocked, it's safe to say he was afraid, and didn't want me to know. As the night went on and neither of us could sleep, I decided to leave the conversation somewhere I wanted. I needed to know what exactly happened the day that Hydran died. Why that happened, how did she get so much money, etc. Lucky for me, I ended up knowing something that truly helped me. Dr. Seo was Dae-sung's estranged father. The relationship had never been great, though Hydran's death was the final straw. Dae-sung wanted to tell the truth, but his father wanted otherwise. Talk about a bastard, huh? Threatening to frame your own son to the police just because you fucked up. Anyways, I digress. It's the lack of sleep. Apparently, Hydran just got through the day before surgery with a suitcase full of money. It wasn't uncommon for patients to appear with a large amount of money at once. Many get illegal loans to obtain the sum. Although she never made it clear where the money came from, and it was their policy to never ask. The day of the surgery, everything seemed to be fine, until 2 hours after the start of the procedures, when Dr. Seo came out of the surgery room screaming and seemingly out of his mind. He had ruptured a big artery and there was no way to stop the bleeding. Hydran died before they could both do anything. Then came something that surprised me. As they both discussed whether or not they should call the police, they heard a faint whispering and saw that it was Hydran's body producing the sound. At that point, Dae-sung said that she was already dead and had no heartbeat at all, but she was still moving her lips. It was then that Dr. Seo decided to cut her up into pieces and dispose of the body, regardless of his son's ideals. After that happened, he insisted that what they saw was completely natural. Dead bodies move sometimes because of rigor mortis and gas production. Dae-sung never believed him because, well, dead people don't move like that. And frankly, I doubt even Dr. Seo believed it. But his father cut her body alone, inside the surgery room. He wouldn't stomach the sight, the doctor told him, while he prepared the wooden box to bury her. A morbid curiosity overtook me, and I asked what she was whispering in her supposed final moments. She was praying the Lord's Prayer. Dawn came without further notice. My parents left for work, and I only remembered I had school when my alarm rang. I felt tempted to pretend nothing was happening, go to school and live a normal school day and a normal life. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. The story was getting more and more bizarre each time I uncovered a new layer, and pretending there weren't so many things at stake right now wouldn't help. I decided I need to meet Dae-sung again, and ask him a favor I wasn't sure he could do. To bring the suitcase. Not the money, really just the suitcase. When we meet. If there had to be a clue as to how she earned that absurd amount of money, the suitcase was it. It needed to be made somewhere, sold somewhere, bought by someone, and this connection would sure lead us somewhere. I just needed to know exactly where. We met at the gas station before, and I was surprised he complied to my wish and brought the suitcase. It was a beautiful leather piece, carefully crafted, and I was right to think this was our lead. It was probably very expensive and handcrafted, not something you could just buy at any store. Whoever made this has a few clients, and we have a bigger chance of knowing who bought it. We just needed to know where to look. Isn't there a tag or something? A logo or whatever on the outside? It's what fancy brands do, Dae-sung suggested. The outside had no visible writing, because of the carefully sewn-on pattern of flowers all around the surface, since the leather wasn't damaged. I can only assume no tags were removed. On the inside, the suitcase was covered with a velvety type of fabric in a bright red color. I was about to quit searching when I finally found a very small tag. It only had the combination of 7 numbers in it instead of a brand name. What could these 7 numbers be? It's not big enough to be a date or a resident registration number. But too big to be an age. Our best shot was a telephone number. So I did the obvious and dialed it. It took so long for the other person to pick up that I was about to hang up, but suddenly a girl with a small voice talked to me.
Here's the place where all your dreams come true. How can I help you today?
Who am I talking to, and where is exactly here? I asked the girl. With the phone call on speaker mode, Dae-sung seemingly listened to what was going on, as confused as I was. As I expected a store, I was sure I would be greeted with at least the store's name, not with whatever the hell this scripted message meant. The girl laughed in a quietly yet menacing tone.
You were the one who called me. You should know who you called and where you called to, shouldn't you? And for me to pick it up, that means your heart must have really wished for it. You truly must be desperate to seek something from me. Only the desperate do. I think you should already know who you're speaking to. Don't you, Jan?
A shiver ran down my spine, making my stomach feel as cold as ice. When that woman spoke my name, the way she pronounced it was so vile, so terrible, it felt violatingly unholy. I felt the same hopelessness and fear a person must feel when falling from a great height, knowing there's nothing they can do to stop the fall. I can't say my family was religious at all, but it's hard not to know true evil when you see it or hear it. It's something you sense from the bottom of your heart. There's no confusion and no uncertainty when you face it. You just know. Call it the devil or whatever you want. This soft-spoken girl was the one who brought an end to Hiron's life. I immediately hung up. My fingers were so shaky and cold from the fright that I almost missed the button. But Dae-sung didn't understand at all why I was afraid. If there's something up there looking out for us, it decided to shield and protect him. Something I'm very thankful for. He was blissfully unaware of what just happened. Wait, what happened? Who were you talking to? You didn't hear anything? I asked him. No, I just heard static, and you speaking to someone else. Never mind, we won't get anything from this. Just go home and take care of yourself. I still have something else I need to do, I told him. Take the suitcase and burn it. It's the best thing you can do, believe me. I left without caring to explain what I had meant. I think deep down Dae-sung already understood my message, and the fear he saw in my eyes. He already knew Hyran had stepped to the lowest of the low for the sake of vanity, unaware of the consequences of her actions and desires. Isn't there a saying that goes, "Be careful of what you wish for"? It's exactly it. What can hear you may twist your words into their benefit. To Hyran, having plastic surgery that day was her goal. But to whatever picked up my call and heard her prayers, that was only a means to drive her to madness. The people that died were merely obstacles to it. At this point, I'm completely aware of what's been going on, what she is, and how to stop her. And I understand that it's something I must do. It's something I owe to the girl I was friends with, that I'm sure is long gone by now, consumed by her own madness. I'm home now, alone. My parents won't be here this night, and I sent Hyran a text, telling her that we need to meet. I know she's read my message, and that she will show up. It's something I'm certain of. I just hope that Dae-sung listens to my pleas and doesn't come here. Everything is prepared, and if all goes according to plan, the final part of this tale will be up tomorrow. If not, it means I failed my task. I'm trying to remain optimistic while waiting for her. As time seems to flow at a slower pace, and right now I have more time to think of everything that could go wrong. But I can't let myself freak out. I need to focus. When the time comes, I have to be prepared to send the dead back to death. As I promised, I'm back. Things haven't exactly gone according to plan, but you will soon understand that they have worked out in the end, and I'll get into it in a second. I'm just glad for now that everything is over. If this is for better or for worse, it's something I've yet to think about. I've realized pretty quickly that the only way to bring Hyran down was to destroy her vanity, and the best way to do it was giving her the face and body she always had. That wasn't an idea I had in the spur of the moment. Rather, it was something I already knew deep down. I just wasn't ready to accept it yet. Once I finished that call, though, any uncertainty I had vanished. I'd either do it and end it all, or have whatever Hyran became remain a puppet and destroy everything that crossed its path. My choice was obvious. During the afternoon, I went to Hyran's house and got her astonishing plastic surgery kit. I had to avoid suspicion and jumped over the backyard fence instead of using the front door that had been locked and covered by the police. After that, it was pretty easy to enter the house through the kitchen window. They had a broken lock and couldn't be closed properly. I would get what I wanted and leave, and no one would suspect a thing, not with gloves at least. As expected, no one was home to surprise me. Then, I had only to prepare myself physically and mentally for my guests to arrive. Night fell, and I started to lose faith that Hyran would come. I thought she was going to play me and never show up. But I was wrong. It was already late, close to midnight, when the doorbell rang. I ran to the door, but found that no one was there. A noise upstairs is what caught my attention next, and I understood it was her, of course, sitting on my bed while cutting her nails with a small knife. She had done much, much more to her face after we last met. Now her nose was so pointy and skinny it would be impossible for a human to breathe through it. And she had shaven her jaw even more to match the freaky look. You could even see the outline of the posterior teeth fruits pressing against her skin, where the jaw was shaved so thinly it became more of a veil than a bone. Her double eyelids were stitched so high and so firmly it was hard for her to blink, making her look perpetually awake and surprised. "So, you want to stop me. You want me to become the uglier one, so you can be the pretty one again, huh?" she said in an angry and nasty tone. I was trying hard not to piss her off, being as cautious as possible. "That's not what I want, and you know that. You need to wake up." It clearly didn't work, and Hiren jumped at my neck, pinning me to the ground. She was never strong, but in that moment she was the strongest a human being could ever be, fueled by her anger, hatred, and madness. She was going to choke me if I refused to do something, so I did. I stabbed her with the pocket knife I had been carrying ever since the beginning of this madness. In a second, she had let go of me, and I did what I had already been planning on doing. I tied her up to my bed to start the procedures. The look of betrayal in her face almost discouraged me from doing what I knew was right. And for that moment of trickery, I almost believed it was really my friend back from the dead. But as soon as betrayal gave up to hate, I was more sure than ever that I had to do what was right. I prepared her equipment after gagging her and tying up her legs as well. The syringes and needles, nail files, the bottles of pus, cotton balls, knives, needles and thread, and of course her own makeup. For some reason, a strange thought popped into my head that I was almost doing a YouTube tutorial on beauty. I remember we used to joke about doing a joint channel for that. I would be the model and Hiren would be the makeup artist behind the scenes. But now, things would be a little different, and I only hope my skills would be good enough to transform her back into the person she used to be instead of making it worse. I decided to start with something easy, removing the fillers in her nose, chin, cheeks, egg yolk, and breasts. All I had to do was take the syringe and needle and carefully suck the mixture of pus and blood she had been injecting into her body. By the end of it, I was glad I had taken another bottle, a 5-liter one, because it simply would not fit the small 500-milliliter one that she had been filling up with her homemade chemical. There was so much pus, I was surprised she wasn't as soft to the touch as she should have been. You know the texture of swollen skin, right? When you press down, you can feel the liquid underneath, and as soon as you let go, it goes back to being what it was. I was so afraid I was going to throw up everything in my stomach, but somehow I ended up not feeling as nauseous at all while going through this. Next, I tackled her legs. Her legs were never thick like mine, but they had never been literal skin and bones as they are now. Doing the exact opposite of what she'd done before in front of my terrified eyes that day, I injected the liquid back into her legs, shaping them with my hands like they used to be. The more the bottle's liquid was exposed to oxygen, the worse it reeked of. In a few minutes it smelled like death, and it was as if I was smelling a true corpse, only liquefied. After getting her legs back to normal, the wounds caused by the multiple needle holes healed quickly, disappearing right in front of my eyes. After that was the most problematic part, the one that I had been dreading the most. Her face. After the fillers had been removed, certain areas of her face sunk as the skin over the liquid stretched to accommodate it. And I knew what I had to do. I had to do something about it, but not for now. I was sure the skin would end up stretching anyways when I was finished with her jaw. The eyes were pretty simple. All I had to do was cut the eyelids and stitch them back to how they used to be. A monolid on her right, and a tapper double eyelid on her left. Unlike traditional plastic surgery, where you have the opportunity to undo stitching and do it again as many times as you need to make sure it's perfect, I had to work against the clock and against her healing skin. I couldn't do it perfect, so I could only hope and aim for the best my hands would offer me. Now it was finally time for the jaw, what I had been avoiding since the beginning. To do this, I had to remove the gag. "Promise me you won't scream, okay?" I begged her. My only answer was almost being bitten in my hand. I was afraid like I had never been before, afraid that I couldn't bring myself to do it. Ever since that day, I couldn't sleep and rest at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I would only hear the sound of Hyren filing at her jaw, and I would only see it in my dreams. The thought of it haunted me. There are certain things you can never forget, and even now, it's like she's sanding her bone away into oblivion. Forever and ever, and I doubt I will ever be able to sleep and close my eyes peacefully without remembering the unsavory sight of that dreadful day. When I cut into her skin and saw blood soaking through my hands and into my bed sheets, I had to stop and puke for the first time that day, and it wouldn't be the last. I knew I was going to run out of pus to simply fill in her jaw and shape it like it used to be, so I had to be creative and make up something that would fill up the void where her bone used to be. Cotton balls. They didn't have the same density as bones, but at this point, it was the best that I had in mind. So I opened a hole big enough to fit several cotton balls and shaped them into the square jaw that she used to have, until I was satisfied. The blood that soaked my hands was thick and dark, and the slightly rotten smell of it made my stomach even more upset. However, this wasn't even the worst part yet. Sewing the hole closed was. The muscles and skin were slippery from the blood, and the needle required a lot more force to go through Hyren's skin. More than once, I almost pricked my fingers, and by the end of it, I wasn't sure whether or not I had been sewing the right muscles back together, since my own tears had been clouding my vision. Not that it really matters anyway, as her jaw was unusable regardless. I finished the suture right through blood, tears, and puke, and I felt emotionally and physically exhausted by the unholy task. The only thing left to do was her makeup, to truly transform Hyren back into the person she used to be. Dark foundation, crisp black eyeliner, pink apricot lip balm, and shimmery eyeshadow. By the end of the process, I was impressed not only with my skills, but also because of how much she now resembled her old self, almost like a carbon copy of the girl she used to be. At that point, I didn't know what else to do. I was hoping somehow that transforming her back into the person she used to be would magically bring her back, and any memories I had left of this horror show would be erased. But things didn't work out quite as I planned. Hyren was still there, a shell of her former self, hissing at me truly like an animal. I thought I had failed, and made her go through that torture for nothing but my own delusions. So I untied her. You're probably thinking that this is where things went wrong, and in a sense, you're right. But that was also our key to freedom. Hyren stabbed me with the small knife she had been hiding since the beginning, and I stabbed her with my pocket knife. It wouldn't be the first time we hurt each other, but it would be the last. One thing that people never really tell you about being stabbed is how little it actually hurts when the object is still inside of you. Be it because of adrenaline or something else. I only felt pain when she pulled back the knife and I started bleeding. Before that, I only felt a weird type of pressure on my insides. But I had always been stronger than Hyren, and I pushed my knife further inside of her abdomen than she did. I'd like to think she was controlling herself as to not kill me, but this is something that I can never be sure of. Then, things became blurry and I lost all strength I had in my legs. There was also this strange ringing noise in my ears that I later realized was the doorbell. I heard screams, and I saw Daesung there calling an ambulance. After that, there was a long period of silence, interrupted by Hyren's dying whisper of, "Thank you," until I woke up hours later in the hospital. I thought that, in the moment when she became dust between my fingers, had been an only hallucination, but two people can't hallucinate the exact same thing. I woke up hours later, in the hospital, with my parents right beside me, tons of police officers, and a suffocating feeling. I didn't have the courage to tell the whole truth because, well, I think you understand me. I just told them Hyran attacked me and left, while Dae-sung corroborated my story. He had actually come to see me that night because Hyran had paid the clinic a visit earlier in the night and killed his father before he even had a chance to defend himself. He thought it was worth telling me that she was ready to kill me. I didn't have the heart to tell him that she had all the chances of killing me during the evening. She just chose not to. It's something we owe to each other as friends, that undying loyalty. I don't know how things are going to work out. If it's really worth to tell about Dr. Seo's malpractice in medicine, or if it's better to leave things buried as they are. All I can say for now is that if my parents had any hope that I'd become a doctor, they're really, really, really wrong.